Welcome to the Purpose to Create podcast. I'm your host, Natasha Wright, business strategist, certified life coach, and founder of Purpose to Create. This is a space for purpose-driven creatives to clear the noise, fuel their creativity with resilience, and lean into their purpose. I share actionable strategies and insights to help you thrive, both personally and professionally. Hey friend, welcome back to the Purpose to Create podcast. We're in week 3 of the Clarity Reset, and today we're talking about recharging. Clarity thrives when we're rested and energized. If you've ever felt like you've had to earn rest, you're not alone. Many high achievers struggle with slowing down, feeling like they can't take a break until they've hit some major milestone. But let's be real. How can you think clearly when you're running on empty? Rest isn't a reward, it's necessary. Recharging isn't about stepping away from your purpose, it's about sustaining it. What if the way you rest isn't serving you? What if you're carrying guilt or pressure even in moments meant to restore you? One of the biggest myths about rest is that it's a luxury, not a necessity. We've been conditioned to believe rest is a prize for productivity, but rest is the foundation for your best work. Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith in Sacred Rest breaks down 7 types of rest we need: physical, mental, emotional, social, creative, sensory, and spiritual. And guess what? Most people are only addressing 1 or 2 types of rest, leaving themselves drained in other ways. Today, we're going to unpack that myth and talk about how to truly recharge our mind, body, and creativity. So let's get into it. Because we're talking about filling our cups, I am taking a page out of that book. We're going to be actively filling our cup while you're listening because I don't want to hear the excuse that you don't have time to rest. So I am going to be walking alongside you so we can practice actively filling our cup. For me, I'm recording this from my favorite chair with my cozy blanket, and I have my favorite cup of tea, lemon ginger, and that promotes digestion. So, we want to make sure the stomach is nice and right because summer is coming up. So I just want to make sure that I'm sipping my tea, minding my business, snatching my body, and talking to you guys. So let's actively rest together. So do whatever that looks like for you. We're going to be talking about resting, and you're going to be practicing resting while you're listening to this episode. Let's talk about filling our cups. I didn't prioritize rest because I saw it as something I could only have after I finished my work. I treated it like a reward system. It was what I saw growing up. My parents worked 2 jobs to provide for our family, and I never saw them rest, like ever. So naturally, when I grew up, I did the same thing. I always worked 2 jobs, or 3 or 4 or 5. Your girl was out here doing what she needs to be doing to make sure that I lived a comfortable life. I just knew for myself that I did not want to have the life of struggle that I grew up in, right? We were a middle-class family, but my parents worked 2 jobs, and so we were living check to check. And as an adult, as I started to understand why they needed to have multiple jobs in order to make ends meet, I found myself working check to check. I was determined not to grow up that way. And I am still working check to check. I am still working multiple jobs. It is this never-ending cycle. I cannot enjoy rest because there's always something to be done. I used to carry this mindset of hustle now, grind now, rest when I'm dead. I used to believe that until just a lot of life happening, right? I'm in my early 40s and I've just always been working multiple jobs, hustling hard, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting. And because I modeled what I saw when I grew up, I just felt like that's what you're supposed to do. That was how I was supposed to live my life. I did not know how to function without more than one job. After a lot of life happened, I really had to start unlearning some things because those things weren't serving me well in my life. As I continued to grow with wisdom, I recognize that that's not the life that I want for myself. That is not how I want to live. I don't always want to be living to work. I don't enjoy the fruits of my labor because I'm always working to sustain a lifestyle, pay off debt. When my mother passed away, something shifted. I started to see rest differently. death had to sit me down to enjoy rest. I had spent so much of my life working that I wasn't living. It hit me hardest when I took time off for almost 2 years after she passed away. This provides the catalyst for my growth, my journey, personal development, and emotional well being. At first, I felt guilty, like I was stepping away from the momentum I had built because I didn't know who I was outside of working hard and I was always working. My weekends were working. My weekdays were working. I just was always working. Even some of my weeknights, I was always working. And so I just really, I had an identity crisis when I had a season of rest because I didn't know who I was without doing all of those things and felt really guilty. But once I started to learn more about the definition of guilt and why I would choose this particular word to describe or communicate how I was feeling is inaccurate. Look up the definition of guilty and ask yourself, are you guilty for doing the thing that you feel guilty for, right? And then once I started to learn and educate myself more about it, I realized I'm not guilty for wanting rest and time to slow down. But here's the thing about time. When I was grieving, I will always hear people say time heals all wounds. The reality is, I don't agree. It's not that time will heal anything. It is the action we take in that time that does the healing work. I realized something profound in my journey. Rest doesn't take away from my purpose. It helped me align with it. One of the biggest realizations I had was my creativity suffered when I didn't prioritize rest. I tried to keep working in my seasons of loss, not just death loss. I tell you guys this all the time, but I had loss of a relationship. I was in a long-term relationship, almost a decade. When that ended, I was going through a lot of deaths in my family. I was dealing with loss of that relationship, friendships, job opportunities, and other things I was putting myself out there for. It was just a lot of seasons of loss. I realized I wasn't being as creative as I wanted to be. I felt like I just was not performing at my best. And it was because I was burnt out. Like I said, I was really feeling guilty about taking breaks, but I really started to notice that my best ideas and my insights came when I gave myself space to breathe. I allowed myself space to breathe, and I really didn't care what other people thought about it because for a long time, I was a people pleaser. I'm now a recovering people pleaser because it does not serve me well to focus on what other people think, how they feel about me, how they see me, what they perceive me to be. It doesn't serve me well because that's none of my business. It took me a long time to get to that point of not caring. But honestly, what you think of me does not matter to me. It does not pay my bills. You feel me? So it does not matter. And I had to get to that point of realizing that if I put as much energy into worrying about what other people feel about me, how they see me, what they think about me, if I put that same energy back into myself, oh my God, I would be a totally different person. I was not putting that kind of energy into myself that I was putting into other people. I had to learn how to prioritize my feelings and thoughts because obviously I don't want anybody to be upset with me, to be mad with me. I want people to like me. I want people to care about me and all of those things. But I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I'm not going to please everybody. I can't be all things to all people. Through therapy, and I was reading this book my therapist had recommended to me I think it's called Codependent No More by Melody Beatty. And that book changed my life when it came to codependency and really wanted to be the person who always wanted to fix things. And that right there was a life-changing book. If you struggle with that, I'd encourage you to read that book because it's very helpful. My therapist came through big with that. I wasn't liking my therapist at the time because he was making me do deep work. But I'm glad that I took the time to do that work. And because of that, it showed me I wasn't resting and trusting myself. I felt like I had to be doing something to be deemed as valuable and productive. I love helping people. I don't like seeing people struggle, especially if I have the capacity, skill set, gift, or talent to be able to help. But what God showed me was that you're not always meant to be the savior. If I'm always doing that, I rob God of the opportunity to step in and do what he needs to do in that person. One of the biggest realizations I had was that my creativity suffered when I didn't prioritize rest. These weren't unproductive moments. They were necessary resets. Research backs this up. Studies show well-rested people are healthier, more productive, and creative. Researcher Alex Sojung Kim Pong explains that intentional rest isn't just a break. It's an essential part of substantial success. I also had to learn not all rest looks the same. For me, physical rest, like sleeping in or doing nothing, wasn't enough. I needed creative rest, space to create without expectations, deadlines, pressure, and that was a game changer. Rest is a strategy. It's not about doing nothing. It's about doing what restores you so that you can show up fully for what matters. This is why I'm always talking about filling your cup. You cannot serve from an empty cup. I know because I've been there. You know too, because you've tried to serve from an empty cup and it's gotten you nowhere. This is why I'm always encouraging my clients, serve from your overflow. So even if you have to take a season off, like I did, I took almost a couple years off the podcast to refill my cup. I can't serve you all from an empty cup, and you can't either. Nobody can serve from an empty cup. We should always be having the mindset and adopting the mindset that we should be serving from our overflow. When I serve from overflow, you get what you need, I get what I need, and we all good. So we need to talk about the strategy of recharging. Intentional rest is just as important as intentional work. When was the last time you scheduled time for creativity, relaxation, or something that brings you joy? When was the last time you scheduled time for yourself? I'm gonna let that let that marinate a little bit because baby, when was the last time you did that? Looks like somebody needs to schedule time for themselves. Recharging doesn't have to be complicated. It can look like saying no to something that drains you. Guess what? They're gonna be all right. They're gonna get somebody else to do it. It just don't have to be you. Spending time in nature, which is one of my favorite ways to recharge. It actually is so refreshing, literally. So refreshing. But then it's just something about being in nature that really does fill you up. Like the intentionality of being able to connect with yourself, get grounded, literally. And I love recharging in nature by water, trees. Just try it. Go for a walk in the park. Feel the sun on your face, on your hands. Put on your sunscreen though, okay? Make sure you put on your sunscreen. Also, it can look like creating without pressure, like just for fun. When was the last time you created just for fun? That used to be me. I wasn't creating for fun. Honestly, probably the last year, I haven't had my creative flow, my creative vibes. I was feeling like I was in a creative slump. I felt creating for money had become exhausting. I was creating from pressure, not pleasure. Also, just allowing yourself to unplug without guilt. You didn't do anything wrong by unplugging. Ask me how I know. How you know? Because my phone lives on permanent do not disturb. And now my friends have caught on and they'll call me back to back because, on iPhone, you can bypass someone on D&D by calling back to back if they have that feature. But don't disturb my D&D and you not talking about nothing. Like, that'd be the worst, especially when I'm actually doing something. I have my phone on D&D for a purpose, and that is so that I can protect my peace. I encourage you to try it. If you don't want to live on permanent D&D on your phone, that's your prerogative, like Bobby Brown. However, I encourage you to even try it for an hour. Try for 2 hours, try for a day, then try for a weekend, then a week. You will become obsessed. I think the older I get, I don't like talking on the phone. Unless you're calling to make a reservation, I don't have nothing for you on the phone. I just talk all the time during my day job. By the time it comes to talk to somebody on the phone, I just don't have the mental capacity to do it. So I don't. And I don't feel guilty about it. And I don't feel bad about it. My friends know, and we're all good. There are times where I do get on the phone, but I honestly have to have the mental capacity for it. Now, able to communicate that with people in my life and not feel guilty about it. If they feel some kind of way, guess whose problem that is? It's not my problem. That's something they have to deal with. I don't feel no way about it because it's about protecting my peace and filling my cup, and having peace and quiet fills my cup, and I protect that at all costs. Are you truly letting yourself rest, or are you carrying guilt while doing it? That used to be me, which is why I have this attitude about I don't care. I'm respectful of people's feelings, but I had to learn how to communicate that and not feel bad about if I hurt somebody's feelings or what they would think about me communicating my needs and boundaries. I'm heavy on the boundaries. I'm going to bring a series on setting healthy boundaries. I have a course on it, but I'm gonna bring that to the podcast because I think it's a conversation worth having. I used to struggle with that a lot. People pleasing, setting boundaries, all of those things go together. And I had to learn through therapy, and I love it here. I just love it here. I am excited about the woman I'm becoming and being able to express that and not worrying about what other people think about me and the boundaries that I set for myself to make sure that I am healthy, that I am speaking the truth in love and filling my cup without it being empty. And that's that on that. So we honestly really have to give ourselves permission to actually enjoy it. It is really not enough to schedule rest. It's important, but it's not enough, right? You really, really have to give yourself permission to actually enjoy it, to release any anxiety that's undone, to remind ourselves that rest is part of the work. It's part of the work we're called to do. Earlier, I talked about Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith's 7 types of rest. I'm going to dig deeper into the types of rest she talks about in her book, and I'll make sure to link it in the show notes. Let's talk about how to know what kind of rest you need. Until I came across Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith's 7 types of rest, I think I fell in that category of only focusing on 1 or 2 types of rest. But I didn't actually put 2 and 2 together that there are like 7 types of rest according to her perspective. And I really enjoyed her perspective on it, and I want to share it with you. And I do agree that not all rest is created equal. It's just not. It's really not. So I'm going to talk at high level about these 7 types of rest that she's identified that go beyond sleep. You can go research more on your own, but these are 7 high level points. The first type of rest is physical rest. This includes passive rest like sleep and napping, and active rest like stretching, massages, or gentle movements. If you're constantly feeling drained, your body might be asking for physical restoration. So you may feel like you need this kind of rest. The second type of rest is mental rest. If your mind is always racing, you may need breaks from deep focus. Try mindfulness, stepping away from screens, or doing activities that allow your brain to recharge. And these 2 types of rest are the typical types of rest that most people identify with. We have creative rest. If you're feeling uninspired, you may need a break from constant output. Engaging in nature, listening to music, or allowing yourself to absorb beauty and inspiration without pressure can help you replenish your creativity. Another kind of rest is social rest. If you're feeling overstimulated from constant interactions, consider taking time for solitude. On the other hand, if you feel drained from isolation, reconnecting with energizing, supportive people can restore you. Another kind is emotional rest. If you're constantly showing up for others but not allowing space for your own emotions, you may need time to process and express what you're feeling. Talking with a trusted friend, journaling, or therapy can help with emotional rest. And then there's sensory rest. If bright screens, loud noise, or constant notifications overwhelm you, stepping away from overstimulation like dimming the lights, unplugging, or sitting in stillness can be restoring. Last, we have spiritual rest. This is about reconnecting with your senses of purpose and faith, whether through prayer, meditation, or acts of service, allows you to feel grounded and aligned. I'm going to run through those 7 types of rest again: physical rest, mental rest, creative rest, social rest, emotional rest, sensory rest, and spiritual rest. As we do our purposeful pause today, take a moment to ask yourself, what kind of rest do you need? How can you schedule an intentional time this week to prioritize your rest? What kind of boundaries do you need to set in place to protect your energy? I want to encourage you to spend 10 minutes this week doing something just for you. Notice how it feels to prioritize yourself without guilt. If you find it hard to rest, I'm pretty certain if you do the work for yourself, you will feel better that you prioritize yourself over other people. It's going to feel good. You're actually probably going to ask yourself, what took me so long to do this? Because honestly, when you're able to fill your cup and serve from your overflow, you show up better, not just for yourself, but the people that you're connected to, the people that you're attracting. You just show up better when your cup is full because you honestly can't contain it all to yourself. Next week, we're going to be talking about resetting, which will be the last episode in the Clarity Reset series. And I'm going to be talking all about taking aligned action without overthinking. Raise your hand if you're an overthinker, to the point that it paralyzes you from moving forward. Me, I'm raising my hand. This one is for the overthinker because clarity isn't just about knowing, it's about doing. Sometimes we overthink ourselves into not doing anything, right? Overthinking paralyzes us from moving forward and taking the next step. I'm going to give you a gentle nudge to take the next step without the overwhelm. Thank you for listening to the Purpose to Create podcast. If you haven't yet, subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and send this episode to a friend. Until next time, keep creating with purpose.